Theme song for the Gear Podcast. How you going, Uncle Leon? How you feeling, mate?
Not too bad. I've still got the lingering after effects of this cold that I've had, but
that's no good, mate.
But it's just me and my fragile masculinity at work there, Troy. What about you?
Oh man, I'm all right. I'm repping the Freo Dockers. I said that to you when we first started. I got the jumper on. It's a little hard to see, but the boys are out this year. Season 2024 is over. No finals appearance, unfortunately, but there's always 2025. That's okay.
Didn't quite make the cut, but things are looking up. I listened to the end of the game on ABC Radio.
Oh yeah.
Which I love doing. I just love a call on ABC Radio, but they interviewed Hayden Young, and it was pretty good. He was basically just like, yeah, there's all these things, and he's like, but yeah, look, we're just not good enough, and that's really frustrating. So, I was expecting to be playing footy for the next 5 weeks, so don't really know what I'm going to do with myself, but...
Mate, he's got a fractured leg. Did you see that?
Oh, really?
Yeah, like he actually broke his leg during the game in the fourth quarter. So had they made finals, he wouldn't be playing.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Catch-22, Youngie. He definitely listens to this podcast.
Yep. Mate, I don't think there's any AFL players these days that are real, guitar nerds. You had Cheezel. Cheezel might have listened to it.
You had the cheese.
Nick that.
It was funny.
Nick that. We should get him on.
That'd be amazing. Would he fit in the studio? He'd be too tall.
He's doing it from his... I don't think he lives in Mount Lawley, man. He's not that far. I think he lives that way.
There you go. Who's your tip for the Premier then?
I'm kind... It's hard to say, man. I'm in terms of order, I reckon GWS is number one.
Yep.
I want GWS.
Yep. I reckon the Giants... I reckon they'll knock off Sydney.
Yep.
And then they'll... Yeah.
I think GWS, I think Sydney, Port... that's my 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe 1, 2, 3, and then Brisbane maybe, and then all the big teams. I don't give a shit about those. I want Carlton to, lose in the most painful way possible. So I'm hoping week 1, they just get done by Brisbane by 60 points, and then also, you know what? Sorry, I'll take that back. I'm sort of pulling for the Hawks. I don't mind if the Hawks sort of pull their finger out and challenge. I want Carlton and Bulldogs out in the first week. That's all I care about.
Yeah, your mate Rory Lobb,
the Rock Lobster, at centre half back, my mate.
Oh man, well it's going to be interesting this next couple of weeks doing the pod and keeping up with the grand final. And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, you should observe and take part in being part of the fandom of the best sport that exists, the Australian rules football.
AFLW starts this week.
Oh, really?
I might watch it a bit more this year because I haven't really done it in the past, and I feel bad about that. But
hopefully Freo go all right. They've got a pretty stacked team.
Yeah, we should go to a game. I think it's supposed to be really fun, like the women's games. So
do a podcast from the game.
Yeah, the captain and I follow each other on Instagram. So there you go.
Well, there you go,
Which
mate.
is really cool, Ange.
There you go. We're not here to talk about Australian rules football, though, Troy. We're here to talk about hard-hitting topics like gear and guitars and the Creed reunion, which we've all been enjoying, and we talked about last week, which I forgot about. But What caught your eye this week, Troy?
Well, I guess what caught my eye is, I went to, I did a lot of work on the weekend. I did a gig. I had to mix some high school bands, which was actually a lot more fun than it sounds. Shout out to one band from one high school that they ripped the arse out of the place by playing Colorado Bulldog by Mr. Big. Unbelievable.
That's terrifying.
So I left my studio on Friday afternoon, packed my car, loaded in the gig, didn't return until yesterday, which we're recording on Wednesday, so it wasn't until Tuesday morning, and I come to the studio, and I'll tell you what, mate, there's a few things that aren't in the studio that were there when I left.
Exactly.
So it's like the anti-Father Christmas has come, but also left a few little goodies. So what I'm referring to, ladies and gentlemen, is Leon came and collected some of his equipment, which he hasn't needed for the last 3 months since he's been away. But what did you get back, mate?
Oh, what did I come and swing by and grab? I got me old Marshall that Jason modified. That was fun. I actually got a chance to properly crank that through a 4x12 the other day when no one was home. It's great. I really liked it with the T75s and that old 1960B. It was really, really good. And you don't have to have the master fully cranked to get heaps of drive out of it. It's very, very enjoyable. Did that, grabbed a few pedals, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Got the Quad Cortex and did the update. and I was like, oh, cool, free plugin. All the plugins that say X at the end of them, they're compatible. So I got the Nolly plugin because it had the most amps, and I wanted the IRs because I think he's reshot all of the IRs, and he's got like every V30 ever. So I figured that was a good use of my free plugin. Not compatible on the QC just yet, so I couldn't use it. But I did a demo video with it. There's a bunch of new effects and things like that, and some what they would refer to as quality of life updates. So that's kind of chugging along nicely.
Cool. Well, anything else you want to say about that? Because you've been, I reckon since that came out, you've been talking to me about wanting to get your dirty little mitts on that Quad Cortex again.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's like, it's an excellent unit. There's lots of like gaps in terms of features and functionality and things like that. But I mean, it sounds really good. And anyone who's using one is probably having like a pretty great time with it. So I think once you can load all the plugins and like the presets in the plugins are always really good, that'll kind of be pretty cool. I guess the flip side of it is like, I guess we're never going to get a Boogie Mark II C Plus model in there because they've got the Mark II C Plus official plugin, which is a bit of a bummer. So it'll be interesting to see how they go if that kind of stuff is just going to like remain sort of behind a paywall, or I guess there's a capture. You could capture the plugin with the thing. There's a bunch of workarounds. So yeah,
capturing. I don't know. Like you've mentioned that before. Like capturing. Like I remember what you mentioned with when I was doing some of the Tonex profiles, like capturing a Axe-Fx sort of sound, which I'm sure that works. I haven't really put the time into A/Bing it. It just feels like photocopying though. It's like just photocopying different sounds. It's a photocopy of a photocopy, but I'm sure it's still fine and usable, but it feels weird. On the vibe check, vibes, not as vibey, but I'm sure it's fine.
Yeah.
So what, you can't use the Nolly plugin on there, so what was available then in terms of being able to port over? Did you have a look?
They've got the Pliny and the Gojira plugin that you can use. So basically all the individual elements, like the individual amps and effects, are available as blocks. So, and the other thing, if you've got presets that you've made in the plugins and you've recorded with them, you can just take those presets and load them into the QC, which is kind of cool.
Yep.
It's fun seeing that functionality. I did laugh at the press release where they were like, a world first, we've integrated plugins with a modeler. It's like, bro, Helix Native has been out for like 5 years, and it's cross-compatible with all the stuff. So, yeah. There is that.
How does it work? Because they do have an editor for that as well now, don't they? The QC.
Yeah, they've got a software editor, yeah. Which for me, look, one of the reasons I didn't do a lot of videos with it at the start was they didn't have the software editor, and having to set up another camera just to film a touchscreen seems so dumb, where you can just screen cap an editor. It's so much easier, and I'm lazy. So, yeah, that's why I do that. And the editor's really good. Like they've done that really well. It looks great. Unlike the Tonex editor, which I will constantly complain about.
It's awful, man.
Like,
shout out to a friend of the channel, Chris, who bought a Tonex 1 and then I think returned it after about 3 weeks because he just couldn't deal with the editor. So, it's, mate, we feel you. But
yeah, are we splitting hairs, or are we just, this is stuff that should be expected nowadays?
Yeah. So it's funny. On Monday when I was teaching, one of the other lecturers just said, we've just got one of these pedals in. Like, have you ever used them before? I'm trying to work out how to use it. And then I said, what are you talking about? He's like, it's this Line 6 thing. I'm like, which one? And he comes and shows me, and sure enough, it's the HX Stomp. I'm like, mate, let me tell you. So it was interesting because, you and I have discussed this before in terms of like user interface and how Line 6 have pretty well got it nailed in. Like nailed in.
The Stomp's great.
It's pretty intuitive and quick and easy to use. Like I showed him how to do everything without having to load up a software editor and do the whole thing. And I know with the QC, obviously that there was no editor for like the longest time, so it is pretty intuitive, right, in terms of getting around.
But it's really easy to use. Yeah.
That's good at least.
I think they did a great job with that and the touchscreen and yeah, it makes a lot of sense to like C block, press block, and then twist some knobs.
Yep.
I think is awesome.
The fractal stuff it takes a little bit of getting. I think you have to like use it and remember stuff a bit more. And I think I mentioned to you like the preset that I used for the Dockers games for like the Optus Stadium. It was like the same. I was always using the same preset for years and years, but it was set up with a wire on it, and the wire was set to auto engage, and I couldn't take a wire because I couldn't have it out on the thing with me. So
Yeah.
every time I plug the guitar in, I'm like, why does my guitar sound so bad? And then I'm like, fuck, it's got the wire engaged. And then I'm like, well, okay, I'll just go and find the block and bypass it. But it is set to auto engage, so you can't bypass it. So every time I was like, oh, I've got to go and edit the thing. And it's like, it's not that hard to do once you've done it a couple times. But the first time being there, being like, oh, we have to sound check a guitar for this stadium. And there's like probably 10 people waiting on you to get your guitar sound working. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is a bit stressful. It was okay. And it also never occurred to me until like 2 years later that I could just save a new preset with that off.
I mean,
Which I did.
and just
I did
delete the wah block, bro.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I did. But like, the thing is with that, funnily enough, with that, you had set up or showed me how to set up that auto engage thing with a wah block, probably in like 2017, and I like used that and then just kept editing. Like I used that as a preset and then just kept editing the guitars and changing it. So I was just kind of like, oh, I don't want to save over that because I'm not going to be able to get this back. And, that was stupid thinking. I just didn't stop and think about it for more than about 3 seconds. And then once I worked out how to take the thing off, I'm like, oh, this is sweet. But anyway, that one, bit of a pain in the ass. I think I know the FM3 when I was borrowing yours for a little bit, that was actually quite a lot easier to get a hold of. So, not quite the same
Yeah, I think that's a... man, it's all... Kane, let me tell you, I think it's just kind of all there. And, if you spend enough time with a piece of gear, the thing that I always see is like, oh, the UI is so hard, thinking that everyone's like an 8-year-old using it for the first time.
Yeah.
Then when you familiarize yourself with any of this stuff, it kind of becomes second nature and it's cool. The other stuff I grabbed, there were a few bits. I put this together. Where is it? Just to have easy access. So Big Sky MX. Did you play with this much?
No,
at all.
I didn't have much opportunity to, man. I've been too busy with other stuff. But
I'm mostly using it for like the Cloudburst stuff in there, which sounds great. Dig. I put this on the board because it sounds so good. That it's a 1981 SCF. It's just a great stereo chorus. I really like it. Yeah, and then I plugged it in and I was like, you idiot, don't sell it. It sounds so good. Pog, Elastic Mattress, Way Huge, Super Puss. So this is like in front of the amp stuff and this is effects loop stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, and I've got one of those Palmer power supplies, which is really good.
Oh, cool.
Because you can set, the Elastic Mattress needs 18 volts.
Oh, yeah.
And it's got an on-off switch on it, which is nice. Oh. And yeah, there's like a bunch of 500 milliamp outputs and a bunch of 300. Yeah, it's kind of a very good do-it-all. I should speak into the microphone, shouldn't I?
Yeah, mate.
It's a very good kind of do-it-all little board. It's just nice having like all the cool stuff there on the floor. When I want to plug it in and make some noise, it's there. And then
what are you doing with it in terms of that? Is that going to be run through the Axe 3 or is it for amp stuff or like how are you actually?
Yeah, I can run it through kind of either. I can run it through the Switchblade. That's how I've got it at the moment. Okay, so I can put stuff pre, post, and do that kind of thing. It's mostly just an excuse to have like the Pog and the Big Sky there because they do some things, some like kind of unique things that I like every now and then.
Yep.
And I saw the Pog 3 came out and I was like, that's cool. So I should play with the actual Pog 2. And it's great. It's just so fun.
Man. But, there's just a toy library, mate. There's no database.
There's this
in the
thing
toy
as
library.
well where it's, who's the guy? Kurt Rosenwinkel, who's like a jazz player, but there's this specific setting where you use it like a slow gear pedal. So it kind of sounds like a really bad string synth or horn synth, but it's totally a thing and it's kind of hard to replicate with anything else.
Right.
So that's kind of fun as well. Play all your terrible jazz licks, but
Man,
that's kind of been,
it's funny.
It's kind of been the thing.
Yeah, there was I can't remember what the band was. I heard something the other day, more like an indie rock sort of a thing that, that's not really where you and I live in terms of our preferred guitar sound and listening music. But there's so many modern guitar sounds that are not like boosted Marshalls and need to kind of understand it. That's unfortunately part of the gig. However, I was listening to this thing. I'm like, man, this guitar sounds really cool. It sounds really thick and like, what is it? It's a very like a relatively simplistic part, and it's just a fucking like Pog. Like it's that or some sort of octave pedal with a fuzz on it, and that's the guitar part. And it's weird because it's so dirty, but like it's not dirty like a Mesa Boogie's dirty. It's like dirty and it fits into like not like genres other than heavy metal. And so, I really need to find... Well, I've got the OC2 and I've got the EHX, what is it, octave multiplexer. I think that's Electro Harmonics. And that's kind of interesting. So I might have to experiment with those a little bit and actually use them in a few more situations, rather than like, you know, when you and I have used them just to like make stuff sound like, you know,
thick.
Just use it as a part and play a little bit higher and treat it a bit more like those indie rock people do. So anyway, I was thinking about that the other day. It was interesting. It was like when I clocked, it was like, of course that's what it is. Like I'm an idiot.
Yeah, that's super fun, man. I know. So Joe Southwell he's got an old OC2 that he was using heaps for the Bernie gig, and this sounded awesome. Like the way he was, you know, playing up an octave but using the octave down effect on it, and then he had like a bass tube screamer and an envelope filter thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, all those. It just kind of reminded me of like stuff you were doing in 2012 when you were playing Cal heaps and you had like the synth wah and the micro synth and just making cool sounds.
Yeah, you can do cool stuff in bass like that. Like the OC2, I've said this before in this, but like I used to use that because I don't have a 5-string bass, and as long as you don't play lower than a B, it sounds pretty. Yeah, right. It doesn't sound like, as you would have heard as well, like with Joe, it doesn't sound exactly like you're playing a 5-string, but it gives you a
cool
weight.
Sound.
No, it just gives you weight, like, and that's the thing of a lot of music that when it's in the key of like D, it like the fifth string on an A, you know, the fifth fret on an A string on bass, it just doesn't have enough weight to it. So if you can just kick that on, it really fills out. Particularly if you're playing in a decent venue with subs and stuff that you can make shake. Said I got pretty good at it. I also used to play a lot of bass chords as well, which was like
not allowed to do that, mate.
Well, mate. But the thing is, like, remember how I used to do it? Like I the touch of it was really important, where you have to like play them. You can't like strum if you're playing bass chords, at least the way I was doing it. And you couldn't hit them too hard because it would be too big of a sound. You just have to kind of whack them in the right way and make it even. But what I used to love doing too when I was playing those sort of gigs was like play the bass chord, let like the fifth ring out, and then just play the root note as eighths over the top of it. So you kind of still have like size and girth, but like rhythmic momentum. Anyway, that was sorry, it's complete digression from anything. Doing that with a
there you go, kids. You can play chords on bass. It's fine.
Yeah, nerds. Like it's not just for bass nerds, like jazz bass nerds. Yeah. I remember
exactly
like those. There's just a shape where it's probably like, you know, it looks like this. You can't see it if you're not listening to it, but you know, it looks like I'm basically giving the finger and playing notes underneath it. But I've seen a lot of people do like chord melody stuff, like on bass, using those shapes. And I was like, I'm sure that's not that hard, but I just can't be bothered learning what it is.
Giving them those ones.
Giving them one of these, mate. Like that's what you get for playing bass guitar.
Anyway, back onto the gear thing. I dropped off a few things, Tondi. So what did you find on your anti-Christmas?
Well, the thing that I was most excited to try was you dropped off the SLO2 module, or the Slow 2 module. Now,
you've got a real deal big dog slow there as well, hey?
I do. It's not mine because I don't have the money to buy a slow. Or, well, I shouldn't buy a slow. But it's been generously donated to the studio for the time being. I've mentioned it a few times. I reckon I've had it in here since around April, maybe April-ish, and I've used it on pretty much every project since it's been here, or tried to use it on every project, and it's made it. It's the as in the actual Soldano SLO. It's been one of the newer ones. It just sounds amazing. Like it is such a great. It's just such a great versatile amp. I'm not saying anything that people don't know, but it's been really nice to have it here, and especially not that I don't have to spend all the money on it. But not only do I have that, I also have your Soldano Astro here, which I've gigged with a couple of times. I mentioned that. And now I've got this Slow 2 module. So I missed a Soldano, but I have a sort of bloody red scent on it, which is quite nice. But no, I tried the SLO2 module yesterday, which was really fun. Because, you know, I've got the amp switcher so I can A/B between the two very quickly and try and match the tones. And yeah, man, it's awesome. The module is very, very good. I've watched a couple of demo videos. I watched some of yours. I watched maybe Pete Thorne's one and maybe Mike Nilsson's one as well. I can't remember. Yep. But they, I don't know what people are saying about it outside of just me watching a couple of videos, but it's fucking wicked, man. It just, in terms of a satisfying playing experience, it's very, very good.
Yes.
Well, you obviously played it and you liked it as well.
Yeah, it gives you that thing. And I think a big part of the Soldano thing is how you feel when you play it. I mean, I'm sure you can make it sound kind of close to a Recto or something like that, but they're like such a fundamentally different amp to play. Like the response is so different.
Yeah.
It's like simultaneously forgiving, but also quite, you really have to be on your game to play it.
Yeah.
Not as much as like a Mark Series amp or something, but yeah, it's just a very satisfying extension of the instrument. I think the module gets that part of it.
Yeah, I think like it's funny because for all the talk of, as we know, a Recto, an SLO, and a 5150, if they share the same preamp circuit, is that right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and like we've both tried all of them, like their modules that they do as well, like the 6505, the Direct, and then obviously the SLO. So
Yes.
they don't. I don't know if like I have literally those three: a Recto, a Soldano, and a 5150 behind me, which I'm pointing at right now. If you're watching it on the video, I used them all last weekend for a session. They are so different to me. I don't ever plug into one being like, oh, I can get this sound. I've never felt like with the SLO since I've had it that I'm getting the same sort of thing, or like I'd go to it for the same reason I'd go to a Recto.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess like the cool thing about having the module now is, I was just saying to Peter before, like having all these amps, you kind of, it's not as easy as like just set them here and play guitar and that's how you get the sound. Like you got to kind of learn the quirks of them. And so today, I played with the SLO when I first got it and tried to get some sounds, and obviously I've used it on some sessions, but you know, having now used it for a couple of months, quite a lot. Today, trying to A/B that with the module and work out how it actually operates, I kind of found some stuff that I maybe didn't really understand about it, which has been really cool.
Yeah, right.
And I'll mention that in a second. But firstly, in terms of the module, I got them really close, man, like super duper duper close. So the Slow 2 module I'm running through the Fryette 292 power amp, and at the moment I'm just running it into my 2x12 SV cabinet, and it's got a Retro 30 in it and a V30 in it. So that's just my little testery cab. That's my like have a bit of a play in the studio sort of thing. But yeah, I managed to get them really close. I think the thing that really made a difference, and it helps, I have an attenuator in the loop of the amp switches, so I don't have to listen to everything at ear destroying levels. The actual power amp volume of both amps, like the module and the actual SLO, made a pretty big difference in terms of trying to make them sound similar. That was one thing that really mattered. And so we've discussed this before, and with Warren too, because like you played his. We were talking about with his slows, right? Like 6, like around 6 o'clock, it kind of changes. And so, like, for those of you that maybe didn't hear that, but like, yeah, the power amp, like the output volume on the Soldano, like the actual one, when it gets to about 6, it kind of changes character a little bit, and it maybe sounds a little bit more open. And like when I've used the amp, I've kind of got it to there without thinking about it so much, being like, well, this is what people have told me, so I'm just going to do it at 6. It's going to be really loud. I'll use the attenuator to back it off for sessions, and then it's kind of going to sound pretty good. And it has. It sounded amazing. Awesome. But I got to like just really test that out. And so when I first tried to fuck with this module and get it just to see how close I could get it, I had the master volume of both quite low, and it just felt like the Soldano had a bit more. It was like maybe a bit more bloated in the bottom end, not in a bad way, but it just felt a bit big, whereas the module felt like it was a bit thinner and buzzier. And then it was just a case of like moving master volumes around and changing stuff, and the SAG control on the Sin 2 as well, like moving that.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, basically once I got it to 6 and a little bit past 6, like the tone changed quite a bit. And then again, I got a similar level out of the module through the Fryette power amp, and they all kind of like evened out a bit. The biggest difference to make them similar, at least, was I had to add a reasonable amount of depth on the power amp on the Fryette,
interesting,
because it just didn't have that like low end like thickness and girth.
Yep.
But the other thing I noticed too is two things. Firstly, the gain control between the two. If I set the knob in the same place on the module and on the amp, they just were like wildly off. On the module, you've got like the crunch setting and the overdrive setting, right? which
Yes.
on the actual Soldano amp, it doesn't have that. It's just like, on the one that I have at least there is, it's either clean or it's in overdrive mode. Clean's got,
Yep.
I guess you got like the crunch sound in the clean setting, but I sort of found like I had to get the gain on the actual amp to like 8 plus to get it to feel like where it was at about halfway on the module.
No, really?
Which I was quite surprised about. And that's when the module is in the overdrive mode. When I put the module in the crunch mode and I max it out, I can get it almost to the same amount of gain as what I maybe had with the with the actual amp. So it's kind of weird. Well, not that weird. Like it's
Yeah, interesting.
yeah,
I mean, like pot tapers might be a different thing.
exactly. Like there's who knows. It's
Having
like,
a module where you set it conservatively, but it's also kind of like, you know, it's designed so that Noon is like, oh, that's the sound.
yeah, and like I haven't maxed out both to see where exactly it tops out, because on the Soldano, like on the actual one, man, I didn't realize how like it really changes like past 8, like on terms of the gain. And I'm fairly surprisingly conservative with where I set the gain on a lot of high gain amps, because oftentimes, like, you know, like you get to like
A 50,
1 o'clock.
150.
Yeah, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. It's like that's too much gain. Like where that is,
Yeah.
it fucking sounds awful. With the Soldano, and I've probably kept that a little bit lower than, not lower, but to maybe like 6 or 7 or something, like on terms of the dial. Man, I get that to like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock on the Soldano, and it's like, fuck, there's a little bit more kind of crispiness and niceness. Like, doesn't sound like a Recto, but you get a bit more
very
of that
cool.
kind of like high-end like fizzy stuff back in there, which has been really cool. So it's kind of made me learn that amp a little bit more. And like some of it's just been really stupid. It's like, you know, don't be afraid to turn the knobs. Sometimes I'm afraid to turn the knobs past certain sections for some reason. But I think I've kind of, you know, found some stuff out on that amp. The other thing I noticed as well on the actual amp, which I've noticed it on a lot of amps, like the Recto is one of them, and my Marshall as well. But like, yeah, really the way that the character changes on the amp past like on a clock dial, maybe 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, it's quite a significant tonal shift. Like you get, I'm not sure if it's a smoothing of the top end or more like low mids or whatever it is, but I think when I was trying to match these two things together, past like 6 o'clock on this amp, it like really like altered it, or it moved the tones away, shall we say? Like I couldn't use the EQ on the amp itself or on the like the real Soldano on the slow module to try and like match them. But as soon as I pulled that master volume back by like 1 notch, 2 notches, I managed to actually get them pretty close. So it was really interesting, man. Like it's if I can ever be fucking bothered to do a video, I have the lineup here to try it out.
Mate.
It'd be cool to do, but
I'd watch it.
mate, I got one video. I might have one view. How many dollars does that equate to?
0, Troy,
Yes.
but it's you're doing it for the clout, right?
No, I'm just doing
Like
it.
we all should be doing social media.
Just doing it for the experience, mate. That's all. So anyway, it's
Clout chasing Docker Rocker Troy Nababan.
as Kevin Ferguson referred to me as the goof on the roof.
That's great.
Yeah.
The goof on the roof with the hair that's a floof.
So anyway, man, like that's been really cool. So in terms of like, if I didn't, it's well, okay. Now that I've been able to A/B them, should the actual SLO go back to its owner at some point, and I don't have 7,000 Australian dollars to go buy another one, I think if I wanted that sound, I'd be more than happy with the module. Like it is very very good. I'd like to try it in the Syn 30 head too, just to see where it what the power section is like that with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that'd be another like interesting test. But there's a lot of there's just too much to do, so little time.
Yeah,
Bloody-
it's interesting. So Stefan, who I deal with at Boutique Amps, shout out to Stefan if he's listening to this. He's been so supportive of the channel and of what we do. Certified legend, but he was basically like, oh, you know, when we were talking about the thing, I was like, man, this sounds really good. He's like, yeah, it's a contender for like best module in my opinion. So yeah, I think he's right. It's just like, it's such a specific thing, and people complain that it's like, oh, you got to get the Syn 1 or the Syn 2 and then modules are this much. It's like, yeah, but if you can get close to a $7,000 amp,
Yeah.
talking Australian dollars, so whatever it is in US dollars, by spending $1,500, That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, man, it's like the 500 series stuff in Pro Audio. Like you get the rack, which is like several $100s, and then a module is going to cost you several $100s, $1,000. It's like the entry point is expensive, but everything after that is reasonably inexpensive. And like, not that Synergy would probably, or the retailers would like this, but these modules secondhand, you can get it probably like 60%, 70% of what they would be new. And they're like, people do trade stuff. It's like pedals, man. Like, it seems to me,
or oddbods,
mate, Pokemon cards.
Yeah.
But yeah, it seems like the Synergy stuff, we're like 6 years into it now. I think they've been maybe 5-6 years, and it's like hasn't slowed down. Like new modules are coming out, people are using them now. Like, well, you know, Mark Tremonti's got them in his rig. That's great.
Yeah.
You know,
did you see the Opeth video?
Yeah, I did watch that one too.
That was cool.
So people,
man, Frederick's such a great player. Hey,
Man.
he's sort of like, I'm like, oh, this is how I want to play guitar.
Yeah, he's the best. I listen, and in fact, I watched that video
because he's on the latest Ghost album, right?
Yeah, I think he played. He played, or maybe not all the guitars, but did a lot of stuff.
Lead,
which is pretty sick. It was like that's why what is it, Kaiserion, like that? There's like a bunch of Van Halen sounding stuff in that. I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah, this is wicked.
He was in a band with Jeff Scott Soto in the 90s. Have you listened to it?
What band was it?
Talisman.
Oh, Talisman.
And they're kind of doing the like King's X extreme Red Hot Chili Peppers thing where it's like it's like funk rock.
Yep.
I mean, you know, Frederick's sick. Jeff Scott Soto being Jeff Scott Soto. I saw a photo he posted on his Facebook page actually with it was like the caption was like, yeah, this photo took like 17 years to take, and it was him with Neil Schon.
Yeah, right. That's cool. I saw a Steve Perry video come up today, weirdly, of like why he left Journey. I'm pretty sure that's pretty well documented, isn't it? But anyway.
Yeah, very, very well documented at this stage.
But anyway, I was going to say, just with the Synergy stuff, it's like it's surviving. It seems like it's doing well. Yeah. People are taking into account. So it's like, it's good if you're in the secondhand market and there's just like modules available. It's really easy to try stuff. You know, I've used it. Let me use English words. Excuse me. I've used them in sessions and it sounds wicked. I use it for fun. It sounds wicked. I've gigged with them. It sounds wicked. Like, yeah, it's a great.
It's interesting. It's an interesting time. A friend of mine made the point with pedals and pedal manufacturers, you know, and there is this thing with like any industry, not just sort of music gear, but you know, the Synergy modules are they're priced in that thing where I think it's a little bit more than just like, it's a little bit more than pocket change. If you want to go out and buy one new, you know, they're not inexpensive, like a $200 pedal or something like that.
Yep.
And there's a lot of companies making $200 pedals that are cool and do fun things. But as you've like got, you know, cost of living pressures and inflation and things like that, people have less of that disposable income to throw at like a new pedal a month or something like that. So it means those manufacturers are impacted in the amount that they sell.
Yep.
But then if someone's going to go and buy a Friedman BE, those big purchases, they'll like save up for it, and it might take them a little bit longer to afford it, but they're still happy spending the money, or like a new PRS or Strat or something like that. They're sort of like prestige items. So it's like the companies making those are fine. People are still going to find the money to do that, but it's that weird gray zone of like, yeah, they're maybe a little bit more affordable, but then if you don't have the kind of spare cash around, you're probably less likely to want to throw it at that.
Yeah.
When, you know, you could be buying yogurt for your kids. Whereas something like the Synergy stuff, it feels like it's just that little bit of, it's closer to that like prestige item thing. You're like, oh, you know what, I'll save up and get the new SLO module, and then because I've spent a bunch of money on it, I'll spend a bunch of time enjoying it. It's an interesting first world problem, isn't it?
Just to move it to another point related to this. So, well, actually, what I was going to say is it's surprising that at this point there hasn't, maybe it's just because it's still relatively new, but anybody can make a guitar pedal at this stage and release into the market. Why have there not been more people trying to make like third-party Synergy modules? Like in terms of the 500 series stuff for Pro Audio, it's like kind of surprising that they haven't tried to do that more. I don't know if it's which again brings me to the next thing, is that the other thing you dropped off was the the Shiver module, the Salvation mods Shiver module.
Yeah,
courtesy of
that's a
Michael
cool
Toran.
one. Hey, Michael Toran.
Very nice.
Shout out to Michael Toran.
It's,
the absolute man, the myth, the legend.
Both of our Christmas presents that year, which
what a
is very,
dude.
very kind of him. So, you got that one. I got the Dirt module, which is fucking awesome as well. But yeah, the Bogner Shiva, it's based on a Bogner Shiva, which I've played those a couple of times. Friend of the channel, Ryan from Chaos, has the actual amp. I'm not sure which
cool.
version it is, but I've had that in the studio for a little bit, and that was really cool. But the module sounds great, man. It's a different sort of distortion character though, and I don't really know how to put my finger on it. What would you say about the Shiva in general as a sound? Have you got a way of describing it?
It's like a, a Mark Series. Let's talk about meat for a second. Let's do it. A Mark Series steak is like you've put the meat on extremely hot coals very quickly and just seared it, and the inside's still kind of rare.
Yep.
And then a Recto is like a slow cooker meal.
Okay.
And then a Marshall's like a burger, or
right,
just a normal steak that you cook, right? That's the spectrum. And the Shiva is it's like a Marshall-derived sound, but it's a little bit more in that kind of like slow, like the attack is a bit slow and it's a bit sludgy and, it's like dense.
Chicken burger?
Chicken burger, yeah. Yeah, but like a chicken thigh burger.
Okay, yep, I'm with you. Yeah, chicken thigh, that more rich, dark meat.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm with you.
exactly. You're expecting the chicken tender or the chicken breast, but you get the chicken thigh, and you're like, yeah, this has got a bit. It's got a bit going on. It's got its own thing. It's like it's grunge. That's what it sounds like to me.
Right. That's
Like it
interesting.
sounds like the mid-90s.
I don't know, this is just playing this module now. So the last time I had the amp in here was probably about 2 or 3 years ago, so I can't quite remember as much. But I don't know if I would necessarily refer
That's
to
the module to me. Like that's what I got out of it when I played it.
Well, I didn't get slow from it, but I've seen other people describe it as well like that. I didn't sound like overly percussive, but there was something.
Yeah, it's not overly percussive. That's a better way of saying it.
Yeah, but it was something like I really liked it at a lower gain setting because it's got like a boost switch on it.
Yeah.
And then it's got the facelift switch as well, which is like a massive gain boost, like gain stage or something. I'm not sure exactly what it is, and a bright switch too. But I really liked it just in low gain, like the switch is off and like just running at it at like a lower gain sort of setting. It felt really like comfortable to play, and it did feel like immediate, and like it felt immediate. Didn't feel like snappy, but it felt immediate, which I quite liked.
Yeah. Cool.
In a weird way, there was like I don't know if anyone would agree with me on this to hear it, but like there's a similarity to like the matchless DC30 clone that I have in like what that has in the mid range, and I don't know.
Interesting.
I don't know if that's like my imagination or not, but I there's like a thing there. It's in the mid range that it just had this like richness to it, and that's like kind of like when you're eating your Wagyu steak, which you obviously do every night.
Or your chicken thigh burger.
Yeah, it's this real richness, but also like a nice, like kind of like a nice crust on it as well. It was a cool tone, and I really liked it. I'd like
Is juicy, is beefy, is tender.
I really want to try it in a track. I might actually re-amp some guitars through it just to hear what it sounds like.
Yeah, cool. That it's one of those things, where I think it's not what I expected. Put it that way.
Yeah, me neither, and I'm a lot more surprised at what it sounds like. To be honest, it's really hit, man. I really dig it.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'd like to try it through a couple of other cabs too. Oh, by the way, I don't know if I said this, but like the last few sessions I've done, my that Jens Benz oversized cab.
Yeah.
So I changed all the speakers out. For the stock speakers, all were fine, but it was an 8 ohm cab, and everything I have is 16 ohms. So I like to try and keep it pretty even. But I put a pair of V30s in the bottom, and then in the top I've got one Eminence Governor and one V30 from my old Marshall cab, like early 2000s Marshall cab.
Cool.
And then that Marshall cab also has an Eminence Governor in to replace it. But that cab has been the cab for everything the last few projects. Like
Really?
yeah, it's significantly beaten out the Greenbacks cab and the other V30 cab. So yeah, and I've tried them, like I've tested them all out, and that's been the winner. So, and on the Governor specifically.
Very cool.
Yeah,
very cool.
Kind of surprised. Like, it sounded great when I put it together, and I really like the sound of it as well. But
Is it a ported cab?
it is a ported cab.
Do you think that makes much of a difference?
For recording, I don't know. Like, I think if it's like having stood in front of the cabinet, even with the stock speakers in it, like, it was massive. Oh, I guess you heard it because I had an EV in it for a bit.
Yeah.
But it felt really,
Bunter.
massive to play through. But in the studio, it's not about like moving air in the same sort of way. It's still reasonably loud, but you can't really capture that sort of movement of air in the same way. It just feels a lot more balanced, and I'm not sure if like I'd love to get an oversized Mesa cab in here because I know that's like the bee's knees.
Yeah.
They're all fucking 8 ohms as well, which is a pain in the ass. But
Yeah.
like I don't know if I suspect it's because the cabinet is so much bigger. There's just like less weird stuff in the bottom end that happens. Like, and I don't just mean with like downtune, detune sort of stuff, like even distorted stuff, like if you're playing like an E-power chord or something, just feels a bit more balanced. So yeah, I don't know, it's worked really well. I mean, coincidentally, the last few projects have been like drop D, drop C sharp, those sort of territories.
Drop chungus.
Yeah, but I've really liked it. So yeah, it's been a bit of a winner.
That's awesome. Just on the topic of shades of distortion.
Yes.
I want to pivot into this as a hot topic, and then on the same thing, that same company put out something else really cool. But how do you feel about the MXR Distortion Plus? Have you ever played with one much?
I don't think so. Are they the yellow ones?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Two knob yellow one.
I don't know if I've ever actually... I've used them in modelers, but that's it. I don't know if I've played with a proper one before.
They're one of those pedals that, like, okay, so for me growing up, like, I listened to the Randy Rhoads tribute album with Ozzy Osbourne a lot, and I really liked his live tone. I mean, I read up about the rig and, the modified Plexi and the Distortion Plus and the Altec speakers and all that kind of thing. And then I borrowed one, man, years ago and hated it so much. It was kind of like, when you think a DS1 is going to just instantly sound like Nevermind, but not really.
Yep.
Not 100% my bag. But anyway, MXR put out they finally did a Randy Rhoads signature Distortion Plus, right? Mm-hmm. Now, they've got the Zakk Wylde signature pedals. They've got the Eddie Van Halen and the Dimebag and the Petrucci signature pedals. You would think that they'd just make it a production thing, right? Mm-hmm. But no, they've done 3,000 of them and they sold out everywhere already. And there's already people scalping them for like $1,200 on the internet. For a pedal that, I don't know what magic voodoo spec they would put in it, but you can buy like a vintage Distortion Plus for less than that if you shop in the right place, So,
yeah, I mean, it's a pretty simple
I don't know
circuit,
why they would do that.
Like, yeah, it's a simple distortion pedal. So, like, what's the big deal? And has it got Randy's face on it? Has it got polka dots on it or something?
It's got polka dots on it and his signature.
Just like Dusty Rhodes.
So,
I never put that together.
Just like Dusty Rhodes. Oh,
there you go. They're not related in any way, shape, or form. Like, obviously not in terms of the like blood relation, but I that's really strange.
That's hilarious. Yeah, bro. I love Ozzy Osbourne. Dusty Rhodes is sick on guitar.
I saw this clip. It was like Dusty's son Cody, who's a WWE champion. Yep. He's on podcast, but I think like Logan Paul, and it's like, Cody, you've been this for a long time. Dad's very famous. Dusty Rhodes, your brother is very famous. Gold Dust, your sister's very famous in the adult industry. Lana Rhodes, and Cody's like, what are you talking about? We wouldn't know anything about that, though, Uncle Leon, obviously.
I don't know what the adult industry is, Troy. So you'd have to explain it to me another time.
Anyway, Randy. So go on. So polka dots on Randy's pedal.
Yeah, it's a Distortion Plus, so whatever. And like, the studio recordings of Blizzard of Oz, they're up there with my all-time, like, I get that he's great and I love Randy, but also that album just... They did not do a good job of capturing the vibe with that recorded guitar sound at all.
Yep.
The live versions sound great, but yeah, that's like catastrophically... I mean, it goes to show that like all this stuff we talk about, like guitar tone, that it doesn't fucking matter because that's like the worst guitar sound I've ever heard. Mm-hmm. But it's such an iconic record and it's like such an important record for the history of rock guitar and heavy metal guitar.
Yep.
And, they just kind of didn't capture the magic of his like multi-amp setup and multi-tracking and things like that. So, yeah, I just feel it's weird that MXR, and maybe it's not them, maybe it's like the estate or the family or something. It's like, yeah, let's do a limited edition because there's only 3,000 potential Randy Rhoads fans.
Oh my God. I mean, I don't really know much about Randy's family, but like his mum died not that long ago, right?
Yeah, not too long ago, Dolores, yeah, which is really funny. So, you know, our good friend Ben Wilson, who I hope is listening to this podcast.
He's listening.
The first time that I met Ben properly, he mentioned that he had just been to the States and he'd done the Randy Rhoads pilgrimage, right? He went to the grave and Randy's mum was there, like putting flowers in the grave, and he ended up like going back to the school and hanging out with her. And he used to call her like once every couple of weeks and just chat to her. And I was like, okay, cool. This guy's obviously off his like this. He's obviously a space cadet because like, nah, like why would Dolores Rhoads like call you? But yeah, and he's got all these handwritten letters, and it's a really kind of cool connection to the legacy. But yeah, Ben also there was a company that made a Distortion Plus clone that I've done a video of as like a Randy signature pedal years ago. And basically, yeah, the estate came in and were like, stop making that.
Oh, right.
And also, apparently, we should just get Ben on the podcast and talk about Randy stuff because this is all coming from him. Remember the Digitech, like they did a Hendrix pedal and a Clapton pedal. Apparently, they were meant to do like a Rhodes pedal and it was like made. And then, yeah, they were like, oh, no, we don't want to do it because he never played Digitech. And it's like, yeah, neither did Hendrix. You know, like, and I think there's a Brian, and they wanted like a wah pedal enclosure, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, that would have been cool. Yeah, Jimi Hendrix famously used Digitech. Well, I mean, the Bad Monkey, like on all those famous recordings.
Bro, he used 2 whammy pedals to get that fuzz tone.
Yep. Oh, my God. So the
Ben's mate Des Sherwood, he's actually got a video of this up because he was he helped them beta test the pedals. So I think he's got a prototype.
Oh, that's cool.
And a video of it, which is crazy. It's up on the internet. So shout out to Des and shout out to Ben.
With the Randy stuff, so like has the guitar community just lost their mind? So obviously 3,000 have gone like immediately. So has there been any response from MXR? Are they going to release any more or is it just tough titties?
It's probably just tough titties, isn't it?
Just like when you try and order a Big Don's brisket and you get in a little bit too late. They sold out in 45 seconds. I saw that yesterday. Big Don, shout out Big Don's barbecue in Perth, Western Australia, who, if you want to get something that they provide, you got to be checking it within 45 seconds.
Yep. That's a whole level of hype barbecue. Good on him. There's so many places in Perth that do awesome burgers and barbecue that have basically like, you know, they've come up because of him.
Yep.
Where he's sort of like the mentor. He is the Big Don.
He is. And not that big of a guy. He's tall.
And if you want to have a good laugh, go onto his Instagram stories, and it's one of those things where there's like 600 of them at one time when he goes off on a rant. Oh, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful thing. We need more of that.
He's not that much older than us, man, as well. Canadian. Big Don.
Well, I mean, you know, he's got the North American entrepreneur drive that we just don't have, because why would you want to work hard?
Mate, you know, they're always looking for staff, and I'm always like, oh, maybe I could do barbecue. Maybe just like give up this this career. This sham of a career.
maybe I'll leave this industry that is in the gutter called the music industry, and I'll go into that esteemed industry called the food industry. The hours will be so much better, the working conditions and the pay. My mental health will flourish.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing I know, I worked at Pizza Hut when I was in high school, and that's...
there you go. You've been in the food industry.
That's the last time. I got pretty quick at making pizzas, man. You know, they weren't necessarily very good. You know what I was always scared about is answering the phone and dealing with the till. Like, that side was terrifying. I feel like I just was always going to make a mistake, and I thankfully haven't had to work in that industry since. I found it more anxiety-inducing taking someone's money than any gig I've ever done. Any gig.
Yeah.
Which is weird. Anyway, what are we talking about? Randy. Oh, yeah, so the guitar community is melting down. Yeah, oh, well.
I mean, you know, you'll have the week of outrage on the internet with, I can't believe they did this, MXR, you dogs. But MXR also put out another pedal called the Layers. Have you seen it?
No.
It's kind of interesting. To me, it's almost like, you know what, Troy? Troy, let me tell you something. I feel like the last the last 5 years of guitar pedals, like the cool stuff, has just been like bleepy bloopy, you know, granular inspired stuff you would do with like a plugin, but in a pedal.
Yep.
So it's kind of like that. And like good on them, because there's some companies doing some amazing stuff like that, like Hologram,
Yep.
Chase Bliss. They do cool stuff, but it can be hard to get. And, you know, MXR have put this thing out. Seems like it's just smashing it. And they did they've got that like dual delay that they did basically to do U2 sounds.
Oh, yeah.
And they did the polyphonic, basically like their take on a POG, I guess. The blue pitch or something, like
Oh,
a three
yeah.
voice polyphonic thing,
did see that.
which is really cool. Like I love the MXR pedal format. I don't know why I don't own a Phase 90.
That's weird. I've got Ben's one, actually. Because remember, mine was
wow.
stolen with my pedal board years ago. I got everything back on that board except the Phase 90, which was a real bummer. So, anyway.
Yeah, that's a shame. I should get one.
Get one.
They're cheap and readily available, and they're a great pedal.
Yep.
You know, you put that knob at 9 o'clock and you go. So yeah, they did the layers pedal, which looks pretty cool. I've seen
Well, so what does it do?
a few
What sort of
things about
effect
it.
is it?
It's a bleepy bloopy
Oh, it is a bleepy bloopy, right.
looper freeze thing. You know, something Electro Harmonics would do.
Yep.
But yeah, it's kind of like. And it's like a freeze thing, but you can have multiple layers and then octaves and things like that.
Right.
So, yeah, you kind of just have to watch the demo to get it. But it's in the standard MXR thing. Yeah.
That sounds cool.
I'd be really interested. If anyone's listening to this podcast on the internet, let us know your thoughts on A, the Randy Rhodes pedal, and B, the layers and the other things MXR are doing.
It means if anyone from
seems
MXR is listening and they want to send him something to demo.
Exactly. MXR,
Or
you know
I'm
where to
saying
find
that.
me.
I don't want to put words in his mouth. So who's at MXR? It's probably some guy named John. Hey, John. Quinns Rocks, West Australia. Can you get a
Johnny
pedal out?
Jojo Shabadoo.
Get a pedal out to this man's stat.
We'll make it happen, Joey Jojo.
Yeah, what else,
Yeah.
what was I going to say to you, mate? Fucking, sorry. I flicked into how our normal conversations work a little bit.
Yeah, mate. I think this episode has jumped the shark, and we're doing David King impressions. So,
Mate, that's the
I
whole
reckon.
time.
I reckon it's time to pull up stumps on this episode, Troy. It's been nice chatting about some gear. We should get some guests on for the next few. I might
Who do
hit
you
up
wanna
a few
get?
mates.
Who do you want to talk to? Or we'll talk to Benno?
Marty Friedman.
Yeah, like
Mark Tremonti.
What would we talk to Marty Friedman about? He had
Oi,
that
Mark
PRS
Dog.
with the stars and the inlays. That was pretty cool.
Oi, Marty, do you reckon Dave Mustaine would play centre half back or centre half forward if he played AFL?
I watched this. I watched the video of Paul Gilbert on the JHS show, and
Oh, yeah?
he's getting
How
a
was
bit
that?
He's getting a bit of hair growth back again, mate. He's
Yeah,
not
Paul.
quite how he was back in the day, but it was nice to see that. I just
Bring it back.
thought that because Marty's still got the mop on his head, which is respect to him.
Man, he's had great hair forever. Hey.
Yep. Yeah, I do appreciate that, you know. Anyway, mate, if anyone's got any other requests for guests, I mean, you can ask, and Leon has to find them because he has status.
That's just how we roll around here, kids. So, anyway, that's it for this week's episode. Hope you all have a fantastic time playing your guitars. And Troy,
Yeah. Mate,
see you next time. Oi.
peace.